The Puzzle Jug, Chapter 5. Sarah.
Thomas wouldn't find her in the faces as he ran his eyes across the crowd outside. She was not there. She was in their bed with the curtains drawn tight against the intensity of the sun and the exuberance of the partygoers. Sarah was 7 months gone with this child she was carrying. Last year at the celebration, she was carrying another one in her arms. His older brothers rolled hoops in between the ladies' skirts, working together to get the best of the Glover children in tug-of-war and beat the Rainsford boys in the three-legged race. Robbie had been the mirror for her joy, and if she had none, he created it out of thin air. Dark hair, darker eyes, a disposition that was more temperate and more affectionate than any baby she'd ever encountered. Lots of mothers called their children angels, but Robbie was the best of the heavenly host come to earth. As such, she was left to assume that he was only here for a brief loan. Sarah knew she was expecting the afternoon in March when a fever descended upon Robbie from out of nowhere. No one else was ailing, not another child around them, not even an old man, no one. It took him in less than 12 hours from start to finish, leaving her, Thomas, and the older boys unable to take in the actuality of his leaving this world. One day he was giggling at the silly faces his 2-year-old brother Dunny made at him, and the next he was lying still in her arms, drained of the indescribable essence that animated him. 4 months later, Sarah still couldn't force her mind to accept his departure. She hadn't left this room to watch as his small body was committed to the ground. She hadn't ever visited his grave. No one had been successful in convincing her it would help her come to grips with Robbie's death. If she stayed holed up here, in the bed, she was free to picture him next to her. She mentally examined every buttery fold of his olive-skinned body, the creases on the back of his plump knees, the little pad of fat under his chin, the black curls standing out from his head like dark clouds rising up over the cotton fields before a storm. Sarah only felt some semblance of being in one piece when her older boys came to her and curled up beside her. On the few occasions when she was coaxed out of her den, the sound of her body rattled in her ears like hollow glass. Her leg bones moved while the rest of her was left strung out across the floor. There was one way Sarah could gather herself up into a mother who looked toward the future. She convinced herself that the baby growing inside her was Robbie, that he'd only retreated back into his former cocoon to get his strength back and would reemerge in a matter of weeks. She imagined him opening his almond eyes and meeting hers again. "There you are," she'd say to him when the midwife laid him on her breast. "I've been waiting for you to come back." This fantasy was a space of solace she inhabited. In fact, she was dwelling there even now, picturing his tiny developing fingernails resting against his fleshy cherub thumbs, growing again to the size and the time when he would emerge, gluing her back together once more. Then she'd rise from the bed. Then she'd cradle him in her arms, certain that her agony had been a necessary byproduct of this horrific, ancient changeling process she neither understood nor questioned.
"Sarah, love?"
A faint voice somewhere in the room drifted towards her, but she decided, as she always did, to ignore it.
"All the guests are gathered outside for the party. Do you think you'd like to just take a little look out the window, darling?"
The sound was getting louder.
"The trimmings are lovely.
Closer.
Of course, the day is sweltering. Why, looky there. The hands are laying out the barbecue on the table right now.
Closer.
It'll make you feel better to just sit up a bit."
The sheets were pulled away from Sarah's face. The smell of her own mother entered her awareness.
"Stretch yourself out, Sarah. You're all curled up into a ball. Think on that little one you're harboring. I am positive it could use some exercise and a bit of fresh air."
Surprisingly, even to Sarah, that suggestion made sense. Hadn't Robbie squealed at the blue ribbons snapping in the breeze that seemed to spit and start last year? She recalled how wildly they whipped and how delighted he was. All right, Mother. Help me stand.
Frances nearly said,
Well, law, Sarah. It's about cotton picking time you pull yourself together.
but she didn't.